Hey y'all, I'm Shamaya, it's like papaya except it's not, and welcome to Plot Twist Please. It's another Hollywood History Day. This is going to be about a historical figure in Hollywood who is blackity black. If you don't know, every other mini-sode now is going to be about Black Hollywood or Black Broadway history. The person who I'm featuring today is Dorothy Dandridge. Let's give a hand for the queen herself, Dorothy. Dorothy Jean Dandridge is a person who I have been wanting to talk about for a while. I thought, who would be more perfect for this than the first African-American film star to be nominated for the Academy Award of Best Actress? I can't think of anyone else. Dorothy has a pretty tragic story, so I'm going to put a few trigger warnings out there. Trigger warnings, abuse, and overdose. I have my facts right here. She's got facts, amen? Yes, she did sit in a lecture hall and take notes at one point in time. I am gonna be, shifting my eye focus. It's not that I don't love y'all. It's that I need to be informed, okay? And I wanna give y'all the best information, the most accurate information as possible. Also, if there are any inconsistencies in the information that I give you, feel free to tell me in the comments. I'm doing my best, okay? She works a 9 to 5 and she's an actress. She's doing her best. Anyway. Dorothy Jean was an American actress, singer, and dancer, triple threat, who won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance in Carmen Jones. Now, we'll get to that part of her life later, but I'm going to start with the early days. She was born on November 9th, 1922, in Cleveland, Ohio. Anyone listening from Ohio, you've been blessed. Her mother, Ruby Dandridge, was also an actress at the time. Had her own celebrity situation going on. She wasn't necessarily a hyper celebrity, she wasn't as famous as Dorothy would later on be. She was still a successful actress who also had a day job working as a cook and performing poems with Paul Laurence Dunbar in churches on the weekends. So her mother left her husband before Dorothy was born, so she never really got to meet her father. Her mother eventually met a woman named Eloise, or Auntie Mama Matthews, who she had a relationship with and who actually started abusing Dorothy early on in life. Eloise was a severe piano teacher who was known to be really harsh, to say the least, and left Dorothy subject to much mental and physical abuse. Not left her subject to, she abused her. Let's make that clear, she did it. Throughout her childhood, while Ruby was writing skits at the kitchen table, Auntie Mama would be teaching Dorothy and her sister how to be ladies. Also, how to sing, how to be proper. Her sister's name was Vivian, by the way. But basically, she kind of My Fair Lady'd it up with them. Basically told them how to eat, how to sit, what to wear, what mannerisms to have. It was like a charm school with the side order of abuse. Also, when I was looking up this information, different accounts called Eloise Genevieve. I do wonder if there was a name change or if there was a middle name in there. I don't know, but some people called her Genevieve. But in the records for right now, I'm calling her Eloise. Now, Ruby, who was a famous actress at some point, eventually grew to be on shows like Amos and Andy and was on other major shows of the time. And if you know anything about that era, Amos and Andy was like what would be today, like the Squid Game. It was it was something that was just so long running. It was like Saturday Night Live, okay? That's what it was like. And she was on that show. So she did eventually have a fruitful career, but I honestly don't know what happened to her. I don't know when she died. I don't know about any of that. But both of her daughters had a pretty rough upbringing. Even so, Dorothy was shown to have lots of promise as a young actress. One day in the middle of the night, Dorothy started performing in the morning as a toddler, just for fun, for hits and giggles, things that you do in front of your parents when you're a little babes. Ruby was like, wait a minute, this could be something. This kid has something. Ruby then saw a way out of their harsh lifestyle. You're gonna be a legend when as a toddler you're showing that much promise, something's about to happen. You're about to do some things. Apparently, then and there she told her daughter, you ain't gonna work in Mr. Charlie's kitchen like me. We're going to fix it so you be something else than that. And I guess that's what they did. So, in Gypsy Rosalie fashion, Dorothy was pushed onto that stage. I can imagine that Ruby was the ultimate stage mom. I can just picture the terror in those faces. If you've watched Dance Moms, I'm just saying I can picture it. Dorothy would often perform with her sister Vivian as a song and dance team called the Wonder Children. They played throughout the South in Black churches and in other kinds of smaller venues. In 1930, Dandridge was a little older. She moved. A few years after she moved, she found success with the girls group. Okay, it always starts with the girls group. It always starts with the girls group, and then one of them rises to fame. Like, they're all kind of okay, but like the other ones are kind of okay. Like, they do fine financially, but there's always one that rises to stardom more than everybody else. But it included her sister Vivian and her friend Etta Jones. They called themselves the Dandridge sisters. Not Dandruff. Jesus. The Dandridge sisters. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I'm not trying to be one of those people who don't get people's name right. I'm so sorry. That's not the life I want to live. So the group actually ended up getting lots of gigs, including those in the famous Cotton Club in Harlem. Now, if you know anything about the Cotton Club, you know that it was the place in that era. Just a little backstory. It was a New York City nightclub that really reached its peak from 1923 to 1940. It was on 142nd and Lenox Avenue, and then it moved to the Theater District. But basically, people like Duke Ellington, Fletcher Henderson, Louis Armstrong, Fats Waller, Ethel Waters, Bessie Smith, literally anyone who was anybody and who was blackity black was performing at the Cotton Club. I mean, I think we can guess why they called it the Cotton Club. It's awful, but like, I guess we can infer. But yeah, it was really big throughout the Prohibition and the Jim Crow era. And a lot of the time, the people who performed, because they were black, or, back then they called them Negroes, couldn't actually eat at those restaurants or go to the bar or like hang out among the guests or even use the bathroom. So yeah, that was again, we can entertain you, but once you become a human being, it's like Anyways, as a teenager, Dorothy began earning small roles in a number of films. So she and her sister Vivian appeared in a Marx Brothers classic, A Day in the Races, as well as Going Places with Louis Armstrong. As a solo performer, she danced with Harold Nicholas of the Dancing Nicholas Brothers in 1941 and Plot Twist. Did I just use the title of the YouTube channel? So yeah, she danced with him in a musical called Sun Valley Serenade. And amongst that tap dancing, my friends, something else was tap dancing inside their heartstrings. And they fell in love. They got married in 1942. And we're going to take a quick detour from Harold because we'll visit him later. He does some things. Don't you worry, Harold. We won't forget about you. I know what you did. Along with doing on-screen work, she also had solo acts at different bars and clubs, at different nightclubs around the town. And you can only imagine that must have been a thrilling, super safe, super comfortable, not uncomfy at all experience as a Black woman in the 1940s. So there's a whole term for the men who would pine after her and pine after women like her who were performers at nightclubs, and they're called mothmen. I wish we had a term like this now. Like, mothmen are just the men who are catcalling you, or the men who come up to you in public and you just want to be about your business to make your money to get your coin. Anyway, so these mothmen would constantly be after Dorothy. One particular instance with a mothman was with one of the most powerful people in the entertainment industry at the time. Tale as old as time, I know. So one day Dorothy was dancing in Las Vegas at a place called El Rancho. One day, a really creepy guy, I don't know if it was a guy, the thing I read said that it was a lackey, but I don't know what that is. So someone came up to Dorothy and said, "Hey, I have a little party going on. It's a little secret party. It's going to be with, the head of Columbia Studios. You know who else is going to be there? Notorious sexual predator Harry Conn. We'd love for you to come." And I know a lot of people will be like, "Oh, I would never do that. I have standards." But like, you're in the 1940s and 1950s and you're Black and you're a woman. You don't have a lot of power, and you certainly don't have a lot of opportunities to meet really successful people. So who knows what she was thinking. So when taken to the hotel suite where the party was supposed to be, it turns out, oh, just kidding. It's not a party. It's just you. It's just you and Khan. It's just you and him. Nobody else is there. If that ain't the most bogus kind of ambush, that's got to be the antithesis of a surprise party. Surprise unparties. When you think there's going to be a party and there's not a party. And then Khan began to go, "I can do this for your career and that for your career and that for your career. What do you think?" And Dorothy, get this, shut him down. This is my favorite part. This is my favorite part of this story, is that not only did she shut him down, but after she shut him down, not long after, she was doing a show, and famous actress at the time, Marie Wilson, asked to meet Dorothy after the show. She met her. She said, "Hold on," left, got the editor of Life magazine, convinced him on the spot to do a spread on Dorothy. Next thing you know, she's on Life magazine. Excuse me? That is my favorite plot twist of the story, is like, women in Hollywood, we gotta stick together. Later on, Dorothy fell for the British and the charming Peter Lawford. He was a heartthrob. He was like I don't know, who's a heartthrob now? I don't even know. I don't even pay attention to that stuff now, but he was hot. He was the hotness, okay? He came to see her show at the New Frontier in Las Vegas in the 1950s, and then and there, they hit it off. At this point, Dorothy's marriage was ending because her husband had a lot of stuff to work out. He was cheating, basically. He was cheating with multiple women, and it was just really sad and not fun. And so they called it in 1951 officially, but they were relationship was on the downward slope in 1950. It's important to make these distinctions. I mean, so also something to note, while she was married to Nicholas, the guy who she's divorcing now, she had a child, and this story is just so frustrating and sad. So picture this. She's pregnant. It's 1943. Harold Nicholas is gone. He's on a golfing trip or whatever. He's like, hey guys, let's play golf. Whatever rich people did then. That's what he was doing. He was at home, pregnant, and then she goes into labor. And they're like, the people around her are like, let's take you to the hospital. And she's like, no, I want to wait till my husband gets here so he can witness the birth of his child. And he takes too long. And so by the time they get her to the hospital, this is like a delayed birth. And so they have to literally go through extreme measures to bring this baby into the world. And because of the measures that they had to take, the baby suffered severe brain damage. Their daughter, Harolyn, had to have a lot of intensive care. Honestly, the fact that they named their daughter Harolyn and his name is Harold, I'm just saying. So after she divorced Harold officially, she was, in that solo nightclub scene doing the thing, performed in places like London, Las Vegas, all the good stuff. So fast forward to meeting Peter Lawford. Here's the thing about Lawford. He was married. So yeah, it's not great. It's not a great trend that we're setting here. So it was very scandalous. And basically Peter made her feel like he was gonna leave his wife, as they do, and she was convinced that she was in love with him and he was in love with her, and there are so many accounts of her just speaking so highly of him and saying how charming he was and how kind and how well spoken and how his words were like butter, or like in one particular instance, Dorothy said, she has a book, she said, if I were honest with myself, I would admit I would have wanted nothing more than for him to say, marry me. Oh man, fam. But yeah, she fell hard, even though people say in the back of her mind, she knew that he would never marry a Black woman because he valued success. And here's the thing, I'm going to talk about this in another video, but this concept of men deciding not to marry Black women because they value success is not new. It comes from somewhere, and it's still very prevalent in Hollywood. If you don't believe me, look at how many successful Black men have actually married Black women. Just do the math. Just do that on your own time. So the next big role that Dorothy would get was in, you guessed it, Carmen Jones. Carmen Jones is a 1954 adaptation of the opera Carmen. Harry Belafonte was her co-star, who was also smoking, and it was just a dream cast. I've watched videos of people talking about their chemistry, and it was apparently off the charts. Like, they were just such a good, smooth, charming match for the screen, and they both were beautiful to look at. It did really well. She had such a flirtatious look and style that was just so classy, but still kind of like, I hate to say spicy, but like that's the way that people would have interpreted it then. She was just described to be really elegant, but also really cheeky and mysterious and like, just something that women wanted to be and men wanted to be with. She seemed well on her way to achieving the kind of stardom that Marilyn Monroe got, but for obvious reasons, never quite reached that threshold. And if you're wondering what obvious reason, it's because she's Black. That's why. Now, before she booked this career-making role, she had to meet up with someone who would eventually become a huge part of her life, in the worst way. The Austrian-born director, Otto Preminger. So Dorothy says that upon meeting him, she's like, Otto's ugly. I'm sorry. That's what she said. That's what she says in her book. She says that she thought he was ugly initially and that he was just like every other ugly man who was going to tell her what to do. She was like, these are the kings of Hollywood. And honestly, she's not far off still. Preminger also wasn't a fan of her. He said that she was too classy and elegant to play a sex worker. Who was the lead? Carmen. That's Carmen was a sex worker. And he was like, she's too classy. She's not sleazy enough, I guess, which is weird. He was like, she doesn't seem tough enough to be a sex worker. But Dorothy was determined to prove him wrong, and she did. She booked it. Throughout the filming process, Otto would serve as her mentor and would constantly tell her things like, drink the richest and the best. Never settle for less. Honestly, cheers to that. That might be the only good thing he brought her. In case you're wondering, I'm drinking water, and for me, that's the best. His advice seemed to be working because she ended up being a sensation in Carmen Jones, even scooping up an Oscar nomination on the way. But as you can imagine, the relationship between Otto and Dorothy started to spiral. They began a romantic relationship along with a professional one, and Otto, who also was married, again, not a pattern that I would condone. I'm never going to be advocating for infidelity, I'm sorry. But Dorothy began to resent the time that she spent with Otto because he would advise her not to take roles that someone else would end up swooping up and getting lots of accolades for, or the show ended up, or the movie, or the production ended up doing really well, and advised her to stick to nightclub singing. By the time they shot the famous 1959 film of Porky and Bess, their relationship had fizzled out. And Otto was verbally abusing her in ways that he would to just an up-and-coming actor who he barely knew. You shouldn't treat anyone like that. Like, even if someone is an up-and-coming actor, they're still a person. Like, I feel like we understand that. You don't treat people like that. In an account, she says, I realized that we were in a game. I to get him, he to lose me. Yeah, honestly, from the accounts I read, this just sounds miserable. Like, she was so broken. This was just not it. Now, eventually, in 1959, she ended up remarrying to a man named Jack Dennison. They divorced in 1962 due to financial setbacks and allegations of domestic violence. Just a constant theme. And hey, this was a constant theme just throughout that era, just finding ways to destroy women. Anyway, Dorothy later realized that people who were handling her finances had bamboozled her out of thousands of dollars, and she owed upwards of $140,000 in taxes. Yikes. She was forced to sell her Hollywood home and place her daughter in a mental institution in California. You remember Marilyn? It really is sad because you think about how people like Marilyn Monroe's careers just took off and they became literal cultural icons. And there are people who literally don't know who Dorothy Dandridge is. And if you're in the Black community, then you probably know. Not even that. If you are a Black actress, you probably know. But she's not even a huge name in the Black community. Like, people just know her. According to the New York Times, Dorothy once said, if I were Betty Grable, I could capture the world. Black excellence, man. We always got to do more. We always got to do more. Even Belafonte, her co-star in Carmen, concluded once that she was the right person in the right place at the wrong time. With Hollywood producers not able to find sustainable roles for the light-skinned Black woman, she didn't end up getting a lot of work after Carmen. She was in a lot of sexually charged racial dramas, which just doesn't sound great in the 1940s. You can imagine what those were about. One of them was where she was the mistress of a white captain of a slave ship. That doesn't seem like it would help your psyche. I'm sorry, I shan't. She also ended up taking up other white lovers, and a lot of people in the Black community frowned upon that. So her film career had floundered, her marriage had fallen apart, her daughter was in a mental institution. After her then husband had floundered their wealth, she tried to revamp her nightclub success, but it was really fragmented and she didn't get much from that. It wasn't doing as well, and she later suffered a nervous breakdown. Now, in order to deal with all this, she was often found to be taking antidepressants and to be drinking a lot, which is never a good combination. So ultimately, on September 8th, 1965, she was found dead in her Hollywood apartment at age 42. It was reported to be the result of an embolism and an antidepressant overdose. When she passed, she basically had little more than $2 in her bank account. Now, the bright side of this, if we can say that there is a bright side, is that people began to notice how important Dorothy Dandridge was to the Black Hollywood experience and to our history. After the Blaxploitation era of 1980, people like Halle Berry rose up and portrayed her in the biopics, like one by Donald Bugle, a 1997 biography called Dorothy Dandridge. In 2000, Halle Berry played Dorothy in an acclaimed film called Introducing Dorothy Dandridge. She ended up winning an Emmy and a Golden Globe. And at that time, she was the first Black woman to ever get an Emmy. So yes, the story of Dorothy is really sad and tragic, but it also just comes to show that we find ways as a culture to live on and to carry our stories to the next generation, and that Dorothy's story will never truly die. Thanks for joining me on this episode. I'm going to be doing more Black Hollywood and Black Broadway history, so stay tuned. Again, this is Plot Twist Please. Have a good day, y'all, and stay weird. Bye-bye.